What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video, and today we got the announcement trailer for the raid up of Callan. Callan is here. We already met in the story right over there in this cave. If you weren't already there, definitely go meet up with the guy. There's a little fight, it's pretty cool. And he's going to be an A-tier Graveborn, which is pretty crazy because we already got some and comes with a few problems we have to talk about. But in this video, what I did was I designed 3 different PvP teams designed around some of his abilities and kind of focusing on making use of those. And we want to take a look at his abilities in the announcement trailer, and then I want to show you the PvP teams, and maybe some of those PvP teams will be really cool. I'm certainly looking forward to testing those, so that will be something. And then lastly, I want to talk about the problem he kinda has already. So let's hop into the first ability. So the first ability is his ult and is really core of all of his abilities. It starts off with a passive part. At the start of battle he generates this field around him, you see, and gets the huge shield. And when there are allies in this field, the damage they take partly gets absorbed by him, so he makes those heroes way more tanky, which is really cool. And I can spoiler that he has another ability that after he took a certain amount of damage or absorbed a certain amount of damage, he kind of like Thorin does reflects it back to the enemies. He sends it back to the enemies, does like this huge AoE attack with a 2-tier range, which is really cool, and that can deal a ton of damage. So the question is, of course, if that can be a build. And my idea was, well, in these specific abilities it only says allies. It doesn't necessarily set non-summoned allies. So I thought, well, that is kind of cool. We could make use of Florabelle, for example. Florabelle provides us with 3 summons, other interesting heroes that we could take a look at and that could kind of bring more allies into the range, potentially giving him more damage to absorb. Could, for example, also be our Hodgkin. Hodgkin is fairly cool for that because on his Mythic Plus we get 2 Deadtide Warriors, and he also deals damage to our own heroes. So we could kind of hit our own heroes, amplify the damage with that, so it's totally possible that we see a Hodgkin Callan team as well. This team, however, a little bit more centered around wilders. We have 3 wilders right here. We put the twins in there to just get a little bit more slams, and I should have said that in advance, there is no Kellen in here yet because, well, we don't have him on the server. So in those teams I currently placed Thorin as a placeholder for Callan. So this is the same team that I want to make with Kellen, but then Thorin out of the team and Callan in there. And then the next thought that I had, well, do we have a cool artifact? We have this one, and I wonder if that is going to work with Callan, because that summons a snowman that taunts enemies within the most crowded area. And one thing that I didn't see in the abilities of Callan was taunt, and I thought, well, that can be kind of annoying. Imagine you have like a tank, you have this tank, and just say this is Callan, and he stands right there, and at the start of the battle he becomes inactive. So what could happen could be that Lily May just decided to run around him or some other hero and just go to the enemy side, which of course would be an absolute disaster, because at that point Callan with his range can't even protect her anymore. She's not even in his field of his ability anymore, so he becomes completely useless, and that is one of the risks. So probably first of all want to place him a little bit more forward, and then, well, it is the question what happens there. So the idea was this snowman, it might be summoned in the range of Callan, and maybe it gets protected by Callan, furthermore giving him damage to absorb. So that could be really cool. Let's try this team, however, in a fight. So there we go, fighting against Mega Fungi right here. Of course, we don't have Callan. I should have probably upgraded this past plus 15, but we're still going to try and see with this team what it can do. Well, it is not exactly the same, really. Thorin has a little bit of similarities in that he can also take damage and then accumulate it and kind of reflect it back to the enemy. But Callan just does that at the start of the battle, which is really cool. One concern that I have, well, it is a passive part of the ult. Usually that it doesn't get countered by Lily May, but it is something that is certainly stuck in my mind, that if that is possible, that would be really bad. From the skill text that I saw before, it certainly doesn't look like it. It certainly doesn't look like it, that it could get countered, but if that is the case, well, he's dead on arrival. Really, he's really dead on arrival. The idea with this one was also, that I thought was pretty cool, we also have double slam. And slam is the topic of our next team. Because that is something, it is just his second ability called Flail Slam. And I thought, well, it looks way stronger than I anticipated. Take a look at that. He just does this hit and then he does a huge slam. And look how many enemies that hits down. And if that isn't like boosted, look how often he can do that. Like there are a few seconds in between and then he goes bam, 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 and the next knockdown. And the thing that I thought about was what happens if we combine that with Ulmus, because Ulmus has a pretty cool ability, extends its route to trap vulnerable enemies on the battlefield, whenever an enemy target is knocked down or affected by other displacement effect, and binds the target to the ground, decreasing knockdown duration by 2 seconds. So we could probably get a pretty nice knockdown with that. On top of that, he has a very similar ability. When he does his ult, he also slams the ground and knocks enemies down. So they could both knock enemies down. I thought that was pretty funny. So the combination of those two could be fairly fancy. Also double tank on top of that. And then I thought, okay, who else do we have? We have Carolina in here. And those snowballs automatically attack enemies that are under control effects, which knockdown is. And I thought, okay, we top that with Bonnie, who needs magic damage dealers to spread her aging effect, and we have Carolina in here. So I thought this would be a sweet combination. And then I stacked like Ludovic on top, just so we have a little bit of heal. I mean, of course, we can't really demonstrate that now with Kellen not being in the game, but still, let's take a look at the fight. We still have to almost there for at least some knockdown, so that's something. If he doesn't get countered, we also have a very nice shield there, which is pretty cool. And double stall, of course, with 2 tanks with Callan, this will be even better. This map, not that great actually, because we built quite a huge distance between Callan and the rest of the heroes, so that wouldn't be quite nice. That would also be something you want to consider with Callan. Like, if you put them on such a map and put them right to the frontal, well, he will be super far away from the rest of the team and not actually be able to protect them. But it would still be nice if he was able to protect something like Bonnie, for example, because, well, at that point, Bonnie always takes a little bit of damage, always takes something like this, and then suddenly is gone. I have that happens so often. It would be nice to just get like 50% less damage on her. Of course, I mean, this battle, I mean, we win it through the Paragon advantage. Let's be real about this. So this is not supposed to be like super real PvP or any kind of like performance demonstration. It is mostly there to give you inspiration for the idea of the team, and that you could maybe do something with Callan in that way. All throughout, one part of his abilities is this Eternal Watch ability. This is one of his most important abilities, and in my opinion, well, we have 2 pillars really on which this hero stands. The one pillar is the protection of the allies, the other pillar will be this one. Because if this does a ton of damage, if this is able to do a ton of damage or be triggered often, then this will be really interesting. Basically, he gets hit, he stores damage. Once this reaches a certain threshold of % of his attack, he does this AoE. And if this really can do that much damage, as we saw it right there, could be really, really insane. And now we have the, well, we have the Mythic Plus. I don't know. It says already here the skill can only be used once per battle, and it's like this howl. And from these info that I have is the text should be: when Callan or any non-summoned allies HP fall below 30%, he lets out the Wrathful Haul, dealing 50% damage per enemy to all enemies up to 8 times, so seems to have infinite range, and stunning them for 0.5 seconds. With +10, you can upgrade that to 2 seconds. So that is the special thing, you can upgrade that to 2 seconds. 0.5 is ridiculous, by the way. While casting a skill, he's unaffected, okay, cool, and it can only be cast once per battle. And if that is the case, yeah, I don't know, a 400% is pretty cool. So like 50% times 8. The stun seems super low. You can upgrade to 70% at +15, so it's a nice upgrade, I guess. But it's really one of the more disappointing stun abilities that I have seen yet. So yeah, not too sure. Yeah, one more thing that we just saw here, he also walks towards the enemy. So he tries to go to the enemy, which means in general you have this protection field always pretty close to the enemy. Mostly, well, supporting really melee heroes, because if we see it already right here, we have the Carolina and the Cessia standing out of range of that area, and a melee hero like Valka, for example, would be in there. Last team I made, well, kind of centered still around having this melee thought in there, because I wanted to run Valka together with Callan, because I thought it was pretty cool. You have a melee hero, pretty strong melee hero running with them, and then you kind of build this super big wall in front of the enemy with Valka and Callan in there, well, Thorin in this, of course, but it could be Callan, and they can't really get through that at all. So that I thought would be pretty great, still combined with the Snowman spell, which is really the artifact that I absolutely want to try with them. And that combined, I think, can be pretty cool. This team works also with Thorin. It works pretty decently well, honestly. The idea with the Talene is that we have a magic damage hero that we can kind of use to get some of the aging buffs going a little bit faster. And of course, I mean, Talene is an absolutely monstrous hero, absolutely great unit. Once she starts her flamethrower, well, the enemy is really in a world of pain. We can see like chipping down on the enemy HP right there, and we hit all the enemies. So at this point, it really starts getting insane with the aging. And once that starts, yeah. So that is always pretty cool. You can of course run Tazi. She's a little bit more popular from what I've seen, but I still like the idea of just putting Talene in there and letting her do the work with the magic damage dealers, which is something interesting, by the way, and I want to show you guys that. So this is the Pridman PvP tier list, and it's not about the tier or rank of any of those heroes here, but one thing that I noticed, I was like, I want to make a Graveborn team, and what I wanted to do in the Graveborn faction was I wanted to have some synergy with Bonnie and wanted to have a nice magic damage dealer to put together with them. And that's when I noticed if you go for magic, yeah, it really doesn't leave much in this. I mean, you certainly don't want to run Nero on most teams. Viperion is great, but also super squishy. Carolina, I mean, you kind of run her with Iron, but you can if you also have some CC synergy, otherwise she's kind of meh. And then Ludovic is really, for me, it's not really a magic damage dealer. It does true damage and then heals units, but you can't, I don't really use him as a magic damage dealer at all. So really not a whole lot of magic damage dealers here that are available. And if you go for physical instead, and Callan will be in that too, is also a physical damage dealer. And look at that, it's like 5, it's 8, it's 9 heroes versus 5 now. So yeah, that is kind of a thing. So either way, you end up probably using a magic damage dealer from some other faction. We saw the Tazi teams here. We saw some Talene teams. Lily May, for me, this is the same. I was recently recommended, I want to mention that, Burial. Burial, also a magic damage dealer. Pretty cool choice. Problem with Burial, and I mentioned that too, is like Paragon advantage. Because, I mean, who has a Paragon 4 Burial? Certainly not me, so that is a bit of a difficult one. And stuff like Odie is also not too perfect. You could run Iron, so getting a proper magic damage dealer for that team, I mean, it's not super difficult. Just requires you to go a little bit out of Graveborn probably. But we now have the advantage, and that I think is pretty cool. With all the Graveborn heroes they have released, we actually do now have some viable units in that faction. It's no longer like we can't build a team out of Graveborn heroes, and we are required, or it is tough to put 3 Graveborn heroes in a team and still have it be decent, which was the thing at the start. At the start, you couldn't put 3 Graveborn heroes in a team and have like a good team. It just didn't work. You were running Thorin and maybe Carolina in an Iron comp, but that was about it. Now we have heroes like Bonnie that you actually want to run. Valka, that is absolutely a decent choice you can put in there. People are scared of my P4 Ludovic. At least Brownie said so. I'm not too sure if he was honest. We will see. Thorin, an absolute monster since the start. Of course, Sylvina is great. She was there at the start as well. We have to be fair about that. So we do have choices. And maybe Hodge can come back now with Kellen, so that could be cool. But we do have a little bit of a problem with Kellen coming up. And that problem is not Sylvina. I just wanted to flex that I have her P4 now because I just today got her to that level. But we have 2 problems actually. First problem starting up is, well, one of his main survivability abilities is in his ult. It's a passive part, and it is the huge shield he gains at the start. He just goes forward, gains a huge shield, 200% HP, and becomes unaffected. There is a problem with that though, and that is in PvP, Inspiration and Intimidation. Every point of Intimidation reduces all enemies' healing effects, shield value, extra energy gains, and buff effects. So if you use this guy now in a scenario where you are in a disadvantage, so the enemy has more Paragon than you, then his shield gain will be affected. So the super huge shield that is supposed to protect him for the initial onslaught and is supposed to like make it so your allies don't really get damage at the beginning of the fight, well, that might no longer be that strong. So that could be a bit of a problem. We'll have to see about that. And recovery, getting shields, all of that, well, kind of gets countered a little bit by intimidation. And then this kind of works into the second problem, which was the first problem that I noticed. He is a new hero, of course, so unless you get him high through the rate up, it could be a little bit of a problem to run him in PvP. And, well, the first situation where you can summon him will be after the rate up, at which point the Valka rate up already ended. So the heroes that we will have in this wish list, where currently my Sylvina is still in, will be Bonnie and Valka. So Callan, also an A-tier Graveborn, will be a third, well, kind of want to summon hero for this same list. Asking the question, well, where do we put him? Will he be like, will Valka go into this, or will it be Kellen? Certainly don't take out Bonnie. In my opinion, the battle will be Valka versus Kellen. Who of those two will you put in there? And yeah, I don't have the answer yet. That is something we'll have to find out and test. I think both are very interesting. I absolutely want to have Valka and Kellen, and definitely Bonnie. I want to get my Bonnie to P4, so she's not going to leave that spot there for a while. Obviously, we have to replace Sylvina, which will be Valka for some time. But what happens once Callan is out of the rate up as well, I'm certainly not sure. I think it is a very strange situation that we got 3 A-tier Graveborn releases in such a short time, whereas the players were complaining for a very long time that we didn't see any of those releases, and now they are like flooding us. And I think the thing that I really don't like about this is that it ended or resulted in this one. Yeah, Nero P3, which I absolutely don't like. I still wish for the base story hero swap, because I want to swap this guy over to Viperion. It was certainly a mistake. I didn't intentionally upgrade him to this point. He was just on the list, and at some point he suddenly was there. Didn't really have any intention, and I noticed then he was P1, then he was suddenly P2, and now he's P3 and on his way to P4. And if I could swap that over to Viperion or Salazar, would be really great. But really, there was no really good selection. If we had a hero of the caliber of Bonnie or Valka in there, would have been a different story entirely, and I would have gone for another hero, which I now, I mean, we can't really. So, yeah, bit annoying. That is what we have to work with for the moment. I'm definitely hyped for Kellen. As I said, we had the 3 teams right there. All of those, a little bit of the idea. Summon Callan, which the combination of like putting summoned heroes in his area that he protects, and seeing if the extra absorption helps him trigger his ability more often. Just like a general Bonnie style with Talene, and as always, the Thorin is the replacement for Callan, so we'll take out Thorin and put Callan into this team. Just like a general stall team, with Valka combining to the front and just tanking as well. And then we have the Slam team with Ulmus and just doing the double knockdowns there, which I also thought about. Do I put Florabelle in there, because she also has this knockdown effect in her active skill? Also really considering that. Maybe at one point we do that. Would be fairly interesting. So nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did so, maybe subscribe to the channel, and with that, I wish you a great day. We'll see us in the next one.